Good afternoon, everybody. Today we'll be making, well, something very basic, a very basic recipe, if you will, for the kitchen. Namely, we will be making some stock today. I will be making some chicken stock. As you can see, we already have some assorted vegetables like some celery, leeks, onions, carrots lying around. Some of this stock will immediately be used in some soup, and the rest we will boil down into a demi-glaze. I've started making my own stocks about, I think, probably largely a year ago, after seeing what actually those bouillon cubes you buy, what actually goes into those. And I started indeed to look at how to efficiently make stock. Now, one thing that's great about stock is it's basically a recipe in which you can use trash or leftovers, if you like. Which means you want to be extracting flavor from the vegetables. That means that you don't need the prime part of the vegetable to cook. So what can you use? For example, the leaves off a celery, no problem, perfectly usable. Just rinse, put in the stock. The green from our leeks that you don't eat, you can put that into a stock. Peels from your carrots, as long as you wash them, you can put them into the stock. And what I use mainly as a meat component is, well, I'm going to try and get one out, this bones. What I basically do is every time I eat chicken, I do believe there's also a few in there from pork chops and ribs, but whenever I eat something that has indeed meat on bone, I do keep the bones. I put them into a little bag and I put them in the freezer. Great trick is, of course, not to gnaw off all the meat and all the remaining bits, but these bones do indeed have flavor. They do contain still a little bit of meat, cartilage, and all flavorful things that you need to make a stock. So as I said, I put them in a bag in the freezer. Once the bag is full enough, I start indeed making stock, as we will today. Now, let's move on and let's get cooking. We can start making our stock. Now, one trick to making stock is working as crude as possible. So we want to be able to fish out, there we go, our ingredients as good as possible, which makes that we just want to roughly cut them up so that they will fit into, there we go, into our stock pot. That's basically all we want to do. Again, for the celery, I'm not afraid to use some of the tops of the stems and the leaves. This is all just flavor. And the rest we can still use as basis for a soup or another application. Again, as with an onion, just cut into big quarters. That will be about it. Same goes for the carrots, just cut into very rough chunks. Next port of call will be that we will indeed set this set this in our stock pot, and we can start making our stock. Now we can start by indeed sauteing our vegetables somewhat. This will have two functions. A, it will help them reduce a little bit into the pot, so that we will just add them, or add some cooking fat, whatever you use. Add all your vegetables and allow these to indeed saute for a few seconds or a few minutes, just to get some indeed nice toasty flavors. As for the bones, I don't really bother, as they have indeed been roasted already. But we will leave this to simmer, and again our veggies will start to soften up somewhat, allowing for our bones, or more of our bones, to go in, after which we can just add our water. As you can see, our veggies have softened up somewhat, so we can add already some water. And start indeed by adding our bones. We'll continue with this in just a few seconds. What I forgot to mention, of course, is if you're working with greens like leek greens or the greens of your celery, do indeed wash this thoroughly, because usually there's still a lot of sand in there. Now, as for flavorings, classical things we will be using is indeed some, there we go, a good tablespoon of thyme, a few rough, full in this case, peppercorns, I will also be adding, now a lot of people just add this into their onions. Personally, I don't bother. It comes out when you, there we go. It does come out when you sift it. So, but indeed, a few cloves. And of course, let's not forget the bay leaf. But a few bay leaves. Trick is here, we are going to submerge all of this, all the veggies, bones, all of these flavorful components, we will submerge them. And when it's submerged, the trick is indeed to bring it up to the point of boiling, but we don't want this to boil through. So we want this on as low a heat as possible to keep it warm. Allow it to indeed simmer, and simmer for at least 2 hours, 3, 4. Some go up to 12. For me that's a little extreme, but probably I will leave this to sit for 3 hours on heat. Kill the heat, after which I will indeed lower the heat and let it cool off. Probably, I think even until tomorrow morning, where we can indeed start to sift all of this, all of the solid matter out, and reduce our stock until we have a demi-glaze. After cooking and indeed resting overnight, this is what we are left with. So some liquid with indeed a whole bunch of bones and some vegetables on the bottom. Now the only thing we will do is basically strain this through a either, well, strainer, colander, whatever you prefer, or whatever is your method of choice. The advantage of letting it go cold is that also the fat has settled to the top, so we can scoop that off easily. But the bones I will be throwing out. The vegetables, on the other hand, I will still recuperate. I have a couple of two-legged feathered friends in the backyard who do go nuts over them, so but nothing goes to waste. And then we will probably, I think, be left over with about 2-3 liters of liquid, which we will then boil down to about good half liter of liquid. Well, we have here the result of our stock. So what we have is 3 jars of demi-glaze, which are pretty much cooked to the consistency that I like it. So if you look, what was basically a pretty whitish liquid is now a very dark brown concentrate. Now, great thing about this, as I said, I use this instead of using bouillon cubes. But the great thing is, as this gets cold, this will solidify. So this will turn into a pretty hard gelatin, which you can actually use just as I do bouillon cubes. So I keep these in the fridge. Usually these pots will last me about 2 to 3 months. The gelatin actually acts as a bit of a preservant, if you must. It makes so that basically it encapsulates all the flavors in an airtight container, if you must. So, but as I said, you can keep these in the fridge for about 2-3 months. Use them just the same. I usually use about a big teaspoon of this demi-glaze, where I would use about 1 cube of stock. Now again, it depends upon how rich or how meager you made your stock, of course, is how flavorful your demi-glaze will be. But this is again a case of, well, the most important skill of cooking, namely tasting and adjusting as required. So, but keep these in the fridge and they will last you for about 2 to 3 months. And you can use them, as I said, just as you do bouillon cubes.